Hi, I'm Danila Croce, and this is Find Your Dolce, the new podcast where we explore joyful living and how to create your Dolce Vita life. I'm so excited that you're here. Thanks for joining. Let's get started. Welcome, Daniel Snowball, to the Find Your Dolce podcast. I am so excited to have you on. Daniel has a unique story to share with us today. Let's dive right into it. So first and foremost, Daniel is a triathlon athlete. He recently represented Canada in the Triathlon Age Group World Championship. So can't wait to hear more about that. But before we get started, Daniel, tell us a little bit about yourself. So you do have Italian heritage. Maybe we'll start there.
Okay, definitely. So a couple of different backgrounds. Thanks for having me on. So my grandfather on my mother's side, so has the Italian heritage. He moved from Italy to Australia in the 50s, and then raised the family there, and then obviously I ended up in Canada. So about 10 years ago through work, I ended up moving up here, and love it up here and have made this my home.
Wonderful. And now explain a little bit about your work. So you have an interesting journey in the sense that you've changed a couple of positions, which is nice to hear because I think sometimes, it's changing a little bit now, but we've sort of been given this idea that you have to, maybe stay in the same thing. So tell us how you went from law to business, and all the while you've kept up with your athletics, with your passion. So let us know a little bit about where you started.
Definitely. So, obviously studied law and went into practice. Realized fairly quickly that it wasn't for me, and that it was, even though I spent the time at university doing it, it wasn't worth sticking it out because I didn't want that to be the rest of my life. Looked around and found that business was something that was more interesting to me and more something aligned with what I wanted to do long term. So made some changes and moved across and haven't looked back.
What did it take mentally to have that strength to say, you know what, this is not the career for me. I need to make some changes. Like, what did you kind of go through when you were planning all of that?
It was definitely pretty tough because was something that, I'd spent 6 years at university planning to do. And, that was the crucial years of your life when you're planning the rest of your life. And then as soon as I became part of it, I realized that it wasn't for me. Needing to switch very quickly, was not something that I anticipated, and it was not something that was fun. There was a lot of regret, a lot of, a lot of thinking about, why did I do this in the first place? What a waste of time, what a waste of money, what am I going to do? Am I going to ever find something that I enjoy if this is something that I thought I was going to do for the rest of my life and now I'm not going to do it? So I guess there was a big mindset change that I needed to make. It just say life is long, but also life is short. So you've got to do it now, and there's no better time than right now. And if I didn't do it then, I might still be stuck there and doing something that I hate.
Yeah, that's amazing. And, that takes a lot of courage to make those changes. I know that's something that people struggle with sometimes. So good on you for doing that. And now, all the while that you've been working, you haven't let go of your passion, which is to be in the triathlon world. So please explain, how did you even get into this? Tell us a little bit about the journey there.
Yeah, definitely. So I think the triathlon is relatively new in the last few years, but the sport and different types of athletics is something that I've always loved. Ever since I was in primary school, I loved, I was part of the track and field and the swimming clubs and, basketball on the weekend, tennis on the weekend, any sport I could do. And as I continued through my life, I, found age appropriate ways to continue that, be it both from a physical standpoint and also a time standpoint. Whatever I could do to keep that going. And then I guess in the last, 4 years, I found triathlon as a sport, and I've, fallen in love with it, my passion at the moment. So have, really tried to dedicate as much time as I can to that, because I love it. It's very enjoyable to me.
It's funny because it's something that it's not easy. It's not the easier route, I would say, when you're choosing sports. So why do you love it so much? What is it about the variety in that sport that you love?
I think there's a couple of things. I think definitely the variety in the sport. So being able to do, multiple disciplines, and, being able to, train in different ways rather than just, for example, if you're someone, biking and that's, cycling is your thing, doing that every day, can get quite monotonous and boring. Whereas being able to do different, many different sports at the same time. But then also the competition. It's quite a competitive sport at all different age groups, and that sort of keeps it quite interesting because you get the social aspect where there's, a lot of people that are involved in it, but then also that, that little competition that you sort of crave to compete.
Definitely. And I would think there's a lot of mental aspect there because you are switching. So, it takes a lot to be really great in one discipline, but you're doing it in a variety of them. So, can you explain to us a little bit about what it takes to switch, from one to the next, especially when you're in a competition, for example?
Yes, I think maybe one of the benefits of triathlon is you don't have to be great at all three or any of them. You can be relatively average at all of them and then still be able to compete. It's more the consistency across the three. So, but I think mentally it's that's the biggest part of it. It's the many hours of training and specific training leading up to it for, throughout, the whole year leading up to a season or a particular race. And I see this with a lot of friends in the game. They have, one race per year and they train many, many, many hours just for that one particular event. And that might be the only one they ever do in their life. And they've been training for maybe 2 years. So there's a lot there. And then obviously in the actual event itself, I think anyone who says that they don't think about quitting at some point during a triathlon is lying. It's one that even though you've done the hours and months and years worth of training, you still get in there and you're thinking, oh, oof, maybe I'll just let this one pass.
Wow. Well, it sounds to me like a lot of what you do during your training really can lend itself to life, right? In the sense that, it sounds like you're talking about perseverance. You're talking about the continuity aspect, so sometimes you don't have to be perfect in something, but it's the continuity, the consistency, as you said, that really actually gets you to the top. Because you did get to the top. You represented Canada in Australia. So please tell us a little bit about that. How did you get selected? Let's start with that.
Yeah, definitely. No, and consistency, couldn't agree more. That's the most important thing. So with that, the selection process is, really there's a couple of races per year that they have as the main qualifier events. And if you do well in your, age bracket, then you get selected. And it's really, based on a couple of races in the year and then how well you do on the exact day.
Okay, that's really cool. And now, how did it feel representing Canada in Australia? Because you come from Australia, so you were kind of, back home in a way, but representing your new home. So how did that go?
Yes, a little bit odd that I happened to be in Australia the year that I represented them. No, but it was great. I think it was even better because I got to sort of, in a sense, go home, even though it hasn't been home for, many years now. But, I also, a great deal of pride to represent Canada, someone that's a new Canadian and been here for years. And this is my home now, with my family and everything. It was quite an honor. Like, I love Canada. I've grown to love so many different parts of it. And to represent Canada was, really a really great feeling.
It's amazing. So you have quite an interesting perspective. You grew up in Australia, you're now in Canada, so you've obviously seen different versions of life in these countries. And I wanted to actually ask, I know the Italian community is quite big in Australia. So what was that like growing up with that and those influences?
Yeah, I think it was fantastic. And a big part of my life and how I've grown through childhood. It's a very, obviously, the stereotypical part of the Italians is a very family oriented. It's very much about the gatherings and being together, and you're living on the same street as your cousins and the aunties, and everyone raises everyone's kids. It was, even though it was in Australia, it was very much like that, and I'm very grateful that that was a part of my upbringing. It was a nice blend of the Australian part of life, the Australian way of life, and then also that Italian heritage with the real family values and the tradition as well.
And I love that. I love hearing that, no matter where you are, we kind of all went through the same experience, very similar. Would you say that your Italian values and all these things that you grew up with, has that filtered in at all to the rest of the things that you're doing, the triathlons, for example?
Yeah, definitely. I think, especially with the community aspect of it. So it is quite similar in a way that the triathlon community is quite a small, very tight knit community, and I think I see a lot of similarities between the two. We have the triathlon club and various different clubs and gatherings, and I think that's maybe something that drew me to it, if nothing else.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Yeah, because, it's kind of like that familiar feeling, right? That home, you feel welcome. And I also think, too, there's something to be said about strength in numbers, right? So perhaps that is another element there, too. So in regards to representing Canada, can you dive into that a little bit more? Let us know what that experience was like.
Yeah, definitely. It was fantastic, and it was a very very well run World Championships. They had they started off like you would in like I guess a mini version of the Olympics, where you have the parade of nations, so everyone has the flag, and they announce each country, and they you walk through the streets of Wollongong, which is sort of lined by supporters, people that have come for friends and family and locally to the area, because triathlons are quite large there. It's a big part of the life. That's where they started in Australia. And it was very very good to have the Canadian flag on the back, walking through, the national anthem blaring, people cheering. It was really a fantastic moment. And then obviously through the race itself, hearing people scream out, go Canada, was really fantastic. So it sort of gave you that extra little pep and extra little bit of pride. And yeah, really, very enjoyable.
That is so cool. Wow. And can you give any advice to someone who maybe wants to reach that height? It's not easy to get there, I'm sure, but what advice could you say to someone, whether it is in sport or I guess just in general, like reaching such a peak point? How do you get there?
Definitely. I would actually, not to sound cheesy, but find your Dolce. Like, really, like it's something for me. I think it worked because it is my passion. It's something that I love doing, and something that I get up every day, and it's not a chore to be part of it. It's something that I need to be part of my life, to sort of make it whole. So I think no matter what your passion is, I think that's something that you need to find, and if you find it and nurture it and try and make it a part of your life in any way that you can.
I agree. Yes, 100%. Thank you for that. You work full time, and, you do find time to sort of make sure that you do this other passion of yours, which is the sports and the triathlons and whatnot. So how important is it to make that time? How do you think that helps you balance?
The most important. It's definitely, I would go crazy if I didn't spend the time doing that. And if there's times when work gets in the way and other things in life happen and I don't get to do it, and I crave it, in one way or other, whether it's doing like training for the triathlons, or just playing sports, different, like paddle with friends or tennis or something like that. It's something that I would probably go crazy if I didn't have that outlet and have access to that, because at the end of the day, that is my passion is around sport. So yeah.
That's right. Yeah. Well, it sounds like, it's about following your Dolce, right? You need to incorporate
Completely.
that into your day to day. And actually, speaking of which, is there something that you do for your daily dolce, I call it. So maybe something you look forward to or something you do every day or almost every day.
Um, I think the one that is the most important to me is going for like a walk with my wife. We have this sort of ritual that we do, and it kind of lets us decompress at the end of the day, and it's something that we both really look forward to. Time without the cell phone, without work, without any stress of the day. I think that's the most important one for me.
That sounds like a nice one. I like that. Well, thank you so much, Daniel. This was beautiful. It was so inspiring to hear your journey, what it takes to get to the top, and just your whole way of finding Dolce in your life and keeping it there. So thank you so much. It was wonderful.
Thanks so much for having us.